Hey, welcome back, everybody. Time once again to meet our community, the Hispanic business community here in Orange County, powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and hosted today by the man. He knows everything about Orange County, but what he doesn't know, maybe his guest is going to tell us here.
That's right, because he does polling on Orange County.
There you go.
He knows a lot more than I do. But thank you for being on today. We have a great guest, so I want to introduce him right away. Jon Gould, he's the Dean of Social Ecology here at UC Irvine, and we're glad to have him. We also partner with Dean Gould on some different things here as the Orange County Hispanic Chamber, so we appreciate that partnership. And we always like to start off the podcast with just you telling us a little bit about you personally, like where you grew up and what you've been doing before you got into.
Given the fact that I'm a dilettante, that could take 30 minutes alone. Right. So first of all, thanks for having me.
Sure, absolutely.
Big fans of working with you all.
Yeah.
So I am from Chicago originally, pronounced the right way, which is Chicago, not Chicago.
Okay.
A native will call it Chicago, but
South side, north side?
North side.
North side. Okay.
Cubs.
Okay.
But I've been here in Orange County for 5 years, spent a lot of my career in Washington, D.C. I've been in and out of academe and government. I jokingly say I have a 3-year attention span, and I've had this job almost 5. But a lot of my career has been at the intersection of research, academe, politics, policy, and law.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. So,
And he went to the University of Michigan.
That's true. One of the greatest universities in America.
Sorry, Ruben,
right up
right.
there with the University of California, Irvine.
there you go. Well, Paul, went to Michigan, so he's always touting Michigan.
I have to push that. Yeah.
Yes, we say go blue.
Go blue, and won a national championship in basketball and
in football.
Football, what, 2-3 years ago
Yeah.
as well. So that's good. So what is the School of Social Ecology? There's no other school like this in the country. Right?
Exactly. In fact, there's no other school in the world with that title.
In the world, not just the country, in the world.
And I'm going to stand by that statement until proven otherwise.
Okay, so why? Why was it created? Why does it?
So it traces its heritage back to the 70s. It became a freestanding school in the 90s.
Okay.
What we like to say is we were interdisciplinary before it was cool. So that means that we teach across different kinds of fields. It is translational, and it was translational before anyone was talking about that. And what does that mean? It means that we're not just doing research and teaching for academic sake alone, but that what we're trying to do is work in partnership with policymakers, practitioners, business leaders, so that what we're preparing students for and the research that we're doing is useful in everyday life, and that we're trying not only to teach about societal problems, but we're trying to solve them. And then the last thing we say is that we teach systems-based thinking. And so the best way to understand that is, let's think about the problem of homelessness. So some people will say, all right, when we need to address homelessness, the way to address it is we just need to build more homes. All right, that's one lane.
Right.
Some people will say, well, it's a criminal justice issue, another lane. Others will say that it's we have to have more treatment centers, or we need to deal with mental illness. That's another lane. Systems-based thinking is to say those are all connected, and if we focus on only one part of the problem, we're really not going to get at it. So that's kind of what social ecology is. But the other thing that distinguishes us here, especially here in this county of Orange, is that our students look not only like the future of California, they look like the present of California. So half of the students in my school, undergraduates, are the first in their families to go to college. Half of them are eligible for Pell Grants, or have been in the past, which is to say that they come oftentimes from working families. And that 2/3 of our student body is non-white. Half of them are Latino. They got into the University of California, which has about a 20% acceptance rate. So a lot of places talk about inclusive excellence. This is a school that really lives it and represents that.
Well, that's interesting. And what I've noticed too, you're really integrated into the community. What you do, I see you in the media quite a bit, in the Register. You're quoted quite a bit because what you're doing affects the fabric of the community. So that's a little bit more unique, I think, in what you're doing here.
Right, and I'm really just emblematic of what our faculty are doing. So, for example, in the last couple of years, we started a new mental health clinic in our school. that is focused on serving the needs of people in the community. So it's part of our new clinical PhD program in psychology. And as part of that, we are really engaged in trying to provide mental health care to people in the community who need it and cannot afford it. We have programs that are working in schools, in the justice system, to really work with, as I said, those folks on the ground who are dealing with the problems of today, who want a research partner, who want a teaching partner. And that is, to me, the best part of what we can be doing at a research university, that it's not this kind of obscure thing that sits on a hill and does research that goes into books and articles, which is important and it's part of what we do. In addition to that, we try to be relevant to the daily lives of people in here in Orange County and elsewhere.
Yeah, you're not just gathering dust on this research you've done, and we don't get to share it with the community. So that's, to me, that's really unique. So you're the dean of social ecology.
School of social ecology.
I'm sorry, you're the dean of School of Social Ecology.
Exactly.
I always get that messed up. I get everything messed up here at the university.
It's an easy thing to get messed up because we're the only school of that kind in the country.
That's right. But what does a dean do? I always wanted to ask that question. And I know you just had an email on that, but what does a dean do?
So a dean is a mashup of a number of things. So the way to think of this is we're a multi-million-dollar operation, and the dean is in some ways the CEO.
Okay.
What that means is I am oftentimes the face and the representative of the school. I'm in the community trying to reach out and meet more people and connect them to what we're doing. I help to work with the leaders inside the school to set our strategic direction, to make sure that what we're doing is consistent with that direction, that we're trying to come up with new ideas of how we move things forward. And then a lot of it is also trying to do friend raising and fundraising for the school.
You do the OC poll, UCI OC poll.
Yes.
Have you ever done a poll where going into it, you were expecting one thing and something completely happened different from the poll?
Absolutely, all the time. And that's one of the most wonderful things about doing this, because I sometimes say we all are social scientists, which is the sense that we all think we all have assumptions of how the world operates, what people think, why they're doing things a particular way. And most of us are just horrible social scientists because we naturally base our understanding of the world on the folks that we deal with day to day. And we're limited to who we're talking to. And so one of the nice things about doing the poll is you actually are finding out what people across the county are thinking about things. So we are going to have a release this Friday, which will be the 7th,
August 7th.
on the question of whether people believe the American dream is alive and well in Orange County. And I went into this poll with an assumption. It has not necessarily been proven true. And what's most interesting is, and I'm not giving away the answers today because we're live, there will be particular explanations for why particular people think a particular way. And the thing that explains a lot of it, I didn't see coming at all. And that stuff is fun because if you're curious, if you're just a curious person, excuse me, and you care about what's going on in the world, trying to get to the bottom of these things is a wonderful puzzle.
Yeah, no, exactly. When you do a poll like this, how many participants have to be in the poll to make it effective or valid or whatever the term you want to use?
So we use this convoluted term called statistically significant. So technically you really only need about 100 respondents, but that's not enough. So we are typically polling in the neighborhood of 800 to 1,100 people in the county, which is frankly better than a lot of the national polling on even presidential races.
Does it matter if you go over to registered voters, likely voters? I mean, how's the effectiveness along that spectrum?
So we have gone back and forth over time on whether we are just polling residents of Orange County or whether we are then, excuse me, focusing on registered voters. If we're doing political polling, we're usually using registered voters because those are the only, when I say political polling, we don't work for a party.
Right.
But we are trying to figure out why people voted a particular way and how they may vote. So we will start with registered voters because those are the only people who can vote. And then we will do what's called screening, which is we will try to narrow it to people who may be the most likely to vote, people who are likely to vote, and then people who are occasional voters. And they're the most interesting, frankly, of the group, because it's always fascinating to find out what would convince them to come vote and why they aren't voting at a particular time.
That's right. And do you do a weighting of independents, Democrats, Republicans, decline to states?
So we look at all of that. One of the questions I get is, how can you be certain that the results you're getting are valid? Aren't you only sampling particular people? And the answer is no. We sample all across the county. Now, it is the case that not everybody responds at the same rate as others do. And that was the problem in 2016 on the presidential polling, that there are certain people that were willing to talk to pollsters more often than others. What we do is we know from the census how many people of different kinds there are in the county. And so when we do our poll, when we see that we are overrepresented in a particular group or underrepresented by another, we will weight the responses so that we then end up having a representative sample. But within that, we are fascinated to see who identifies as Republican and why, who says they're a Democrat, and who is saying that they're independent or no party preference. And those groups are moving these days.
And they're moving. How can you tell that they're moving? What is
So
it?
we look over time. So we've been doing this particular polling since 2023, and just in the 3 years that we have been doing this, we've seen particular groups move particular ways. So I'll give you 3 examples. From when we first started doing this polling to now, Latino residents in Orange County have moved slightly from the Democratic column to the independent or no party preference column. That matches with trends that we're seeing nationally, as there's a sense that among Latinos that maybe the Democratic Party has not done as much for them as they thought the party had done in the past. Now, that doesn't mean they're necessarily becoming Republican or voting Republican. It's instead, when we ask someone, well, do you think of yourself as a Democrat, Republican, or independent? What's the answer? And they're slightly saying these days more often that they're independent than they did before and less Democratic. Conversely, in this county, Asian American voters are identifying a little bit more with Democrats than they used to, and they're certainly identifying as more independent than Republican than they did. Those are trends that we've also seen elsewhere. But the one that I'm really quite curious about is younger voters, those under 30, who are not center right people, are nonetheless identifying more as independent than they used to. They would historically have been more Democratic than independent. And we're probing a little bit to figure out why this is. And there's kind of a sense of a pox on both of your houses, that elected leaders haven't done what younger voters want to see them do. And it's more, I'm a little fed up. And again, and it's not that they're voting differently, it's they're identifying differently. So that's all fun to watch in the county, because I always say that we are one of the few purple counties in America because it happens to be true.
Yeah.
In fact, we could do a little quick poll here. Of the top 25 counties by population in America, how many do you think are truly purple?
Oh my gosh.
Paul, do you know?
I never even thought
I'm
about
going to
this.
say 2 or 3. I think Maricopa would be one.
That's correct.
We'd be
Arizona.
one.
That's 2.
Something in Ohio,
Maybe Atlanta. I don't know. Maybe not.
It's Tarrant County, Texas, which is Fort
Tarrant
Worth.
County. Okay.
So there are only
which I mentioned earlier. I should have
You
finished
did.
that one right.
So there are, of the top 25 by population in America, only 3 are purple.
Really?
It's Orange County, it's Tarrant County, Texas, and it's Maricopa County, Arizona. Now, purple is defined as kind of a mix of Democrat, Republican, and Independent, and going back and forth and voting for Democrats or Republicans at the top of a ticket.
And
in
is
an
that based
election.
on recent election results or on where they're registered?
So I was just saying it's both.
Right. Okay.
So it's recent election results and how people are identifying.
How are we right now in the county? We're like a third.
We are roughly a third Democrat, Republican, Independent, or no party preference. And why I think we need to be leaning into that as a county is this makes us quite exceptional. And of those three, how many people other than Paul, because you named it earlier, would even know Tarrant County, Texas?
Yeah.
Almost no one does. Maricopa, a little bit, because if you say Phoenix, people know Phoenix.
Sure.
And Tarrant, by the way, is Fort Worth. But how many of them have had television shows and movies done about them? Only us.
Yeah.
So if we want to talk about what a future America looks like when we get past a period where there is such divisiveness, hey, America, look at a purple county where Democrats, Republicans, and independents not only live among one another, but they have figured out how to work with one another,
Right.
if only because we work in the same businesses together and we have to collaborate to make this county's government work. So I think Orange County really can be a model for the country of where we go following this period of just tremendous divisiveness.
Well, you said collaborate. I mean, that's what I've noticed when I grew up in LA County, but coming down here, it seems like people were more, even back then, even when we moved down here 25 years ago, were more willing to collaborate anyway. That this is a county that wants to work together regardless of party, regardless of, where you stand on certain issues and stuff like that. And so that's one of the nice things I think about Orange County.
That's been my experience, and it's been such a breath of fresh air. So, as I say, I spent almost 20-something years, actually a little more, in Washington, D.C., spent a year and a half in Maricopa before showing up here. Washington, D.C. has just become ungovernable, not just as a government, but just as a city, because it used to be, and you know this, used to do some work in D.C.,
Sure.
the Democrats and Republicans would disagree with one another during the day, but they could go out and socialize at night together.
The Capitol Grill, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore. People are in Team Red or Team Blue, and they don't talk to one another. And I came out here to find this place, as you say, where people don't necessarily agree, but they want to move things forward. People are still in growth mode, and they're in collaboration mode, and that is such a rarity in America right now, and we really ought to be celebrating that about this county. And I think that's where the chambers of commerce and other organizations really have a tremendous opportunity to a role to play in being promoters for what's happening here in Orange County that's different than elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think people like ourselves with the chamber, we're all in for Orange County, regardless of where people stand on certain political issues. We want to see the county succeed, whether it's in education and whether it's in advocacy, whether it's economic development for our businesses. Those are the things we work on every day as a chamber, and I think most people in this county are focused on that too. So I think it's a great thing to be able to kind of do that. You worked in the Department of Justice, and also we were a fellow at the U.S. Supreme Court. You have to kind of tell us a little bit about that experience on both of those.
And I also worked at the National Science Foundation back when my program existed. But let's start with the one that's probably the most fun, and that was the Supreme Court Fellowship. So that was a mid-career opportunity. The federal courts bring in 4 people a year. And back when I was doing it, it really was mid-career. They've made it more early career. You come in and they put you in one of the 4 offices of the federal court. So people don't necessarily know that there are 4 parts of the administration of the federal courts. There's the administrative office of the courts, they make things run. There's the Federal Judicial Center, which does research and training. There's the Federal U.S. Sentencing Commission, and then one person is put at the Supreme Court as an assistant to the Chief Justice. I had a research background, so I was at the Federal Judicial Center. That was all fascinating, but the really fun part was that it's a learning experience. So we were meeting with the justices on a regular basis, learning a little bit about what makes them tick and how they think about the world. We had opportunities to learn from other people at responsible positions of government. But all of that, really, what I come away from it with was kind of the personalities and the relationships. So, you learn that, for example, Justice Alito is a huge fan of the Philadelphia Phillies. I am not. I'm originally from Chicago, so I'm a Cubs fan, Washington Nationals fan, but have become a Dodger fan. And someday, if the Angels ever become good again, maybe I'll become an Angels fan. But you know, you're sitting at lunch talking trash with the Supreme Court justice about baseball. What else in your life do you get to do
Sure.
about that?
So was Roberts the Chief Justice?
He
when you
had
were
just become the Chief Justice when
Okay.
I was
Okay.
a fellow.
there? Okay. And there was a relationship between Justice Ginsburg and Justice Scalia, kind of polar opposites politically,
Right, but
but
what
had
a-
a great personal friendship.
They
right?
were. And one of the things that was fun to see about them is Justice Scalia was this giant personality.
Right.
He would walk into a room and take it over. Justice Ginsburg was exactly the opposite. She was just a very, very quiet person. But they were the best of friends, and they went to the symphony together. They would get together with their spouses. Actually, Justice Ginsburg's spouse is the one I remember the best because Marty Ginsburg was a tax professor at Georgetown.
Ah.
And just the life of every party he was at. In fact, he created a cookbook that was all the recipes of the spouses of the Supreme Court justices, and the name of the book was Supreme Chef. So you get a sense of the justices and others as people. And I can tell you there were many of the justices I could not stand their jurisprudence, but were decent people, and there were some whose jurisprudence I subscribed to who I didn't find to be the most entertaining or interesting of people.
Well, that's interesting. And then you were also at the DOJ, or the Department
I
of
was.
Justice.
So I had an opportunity in the Obama administration to come to the Office of Justice Policy and work on some really interesting, meaty issues where research and policy meet justice. So, for example, forensic testing. What should be done? How should it be done? How should it be used? Eyewitness identification procedures and the like. And for me, one of the areas that I had done research on, when I was a faculty member in Washington, D.C., was on the issue of wrongful convictions. So I think we all agree we want to see the justice system be accurate and not
Yes.
convict anyone who is innocent. And so one of the questions is what would lead someone who's innocent to be wrongly convicted? And one of the problems was the way witness identification procedures were run. And so I had done some research and had been able to identify some potential changes. And one of the most exciting parts of my career was being in the Department of Justice and working with the FBI and others to see some of those changes put into effect. And they are as simple as what's called a double-blind identification procedure, which is to say, normally we want the witness to not know in a lineup who is the suspect, because that becomes suggestive. You don't
Right.
want them to know that. But the other part is, it turns out research shows that the identifications are more accurate if the officer administering the lineup doesn't know who the suspect is either. Because if the officer knows, they sometimes unintentionally give out subtle cues that lead the witness to identify who everyone thinks is the suspect. And if they have the wrong suspect, then the witness is led, again, usually inadvertently, to identify the wrong person. And so we were able to get the federal law enforcement agencies at that time to adopt a procedure where they were not using, they were using double-blind administration wherever possible. And that was exciting.
Well, that's good. Did you also work with, I don't know if you work with him, but I think, was it one of the most foremost authorities is it Brian Stevenson? Or?
He is well known. He runs a program down in the South. I've met him a couple times. I've
Okay.
never had the chance to work with him.
Okay, but he does some really good work in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on in the school? You've been around here for 5 years?
Almost 5. I've been very fortunate that I just got reappointed for another term as dean, which begins in January.
Okay.
So that's the good news and the bad news for my colleagues.
So what are the next 5 years going to look like? What do you have planned?
More of the same if we're lucky. There are multiple other ways that I think we can be of service to the community. And you were talking earlier about how the chamber sees its role. I like to think that we in the School of Social Ecology see our role the same way, which is that we want to be doing what's called community engaged research, which is that we are working with members of the community to figure out if they just knew more about this, how could they could do their jobs better. And so we want to work with them in creating those kinds of research projects. We have recently stood up something that we're calling the Social Impact Hub, which is trying to connect our faculty and our students more with members of the community. I'd like to see us do more in terms of leading on developing future leaders in the county and the state. There's an opportunity, I think, to work with folks in elected office or people who are thinking of running for office to help them be better prepared or more knowledgeable about the problems that are facing the state. One of the things that we find when we do the polling is over and over and over again, we are seeing the same problems being identified by residents as the things that most trouble them. The cost of housing, the cost of living, transportation, problems with the environment and how it impacts their lives, education. Less and less we're seeing crime and criminal justice. How can we help prepare future leaders to be knowledgeable on those subjects and be ready to step in and to address those kinds of problems so that politics becomes more about solving problems and less about just ego boosting.
Right.
I sound like I'm running for Miss America. And if I had a magic wand, we would fix things that way. But we want to be part of the folks working towards a solution.
Yeah, somebody, like, I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and somebody was talking about housing, right? And they said, we don't have a housing crisis. We have a policy crisis regards to housing. You know, especially in California, right? There's certain things that are barriers to housing, whether it's CEQA, whether it's just the regulatory environment where it costs $200,000 more to build a house here versus Texas, right, Fort Worth or wherever it may be. So how do you overcome that policy issue, though?
So the beautiful thing here is I'm not an expert on that, and so that is not something I'm going to solve. But what we're good at in the school, and first of all, I should back up. We have housing experts in the school, and so I would defer to them.
Sure.
But what the school is good at is bringing people together to try to talk about those things and try to find the ways forward. And those are the kinds of things that we want to do. But I would throw other things into the mix too. It's not just all of those things. It's also, is housing being built in areas that makes it easier for people to get to jobs rather than having to do long commutes?
Right.
What stops communities from wanting housing built in their communities? Or conversely, how do we build housing in communities that still maintains the character of a community? Because people have understandably moved somewhere because they like what their community is like. So if we're going to put more people in an area, how do we help those areas maintain their quality of life at the same time?
Yeah, and you brought up earlier, you talked about homelessness, and I think with your work, you know, when you look at homelessness, it's not just a one segment issue, right? It's not just, it's, you know, veterans, drug addiction, mental illness, kids who age out after 18 from foster care. There's multiple ways we're going to have to fight that issue, right? It's not going to be just one size fits all. But I think with your work, you're able to kind of get more granular, which I think is really valuable, right? It's not just, oh, do you like this? Yes or no. It's not a yes or no answer to these things. That's right. You got to get more specific on these
Exactly. Things. And that's one of the things we are, you asked things we're hoping to do in the future. I'd like to see us take the poll and move also into focus groups because of what you're talking about. So I know you know what a focus group is, but for people who may be listening, a focus group is when you bring 10 or 12 people together to talk to them about how they see a particular issue where we're going beyond, you know, is housing a problem, yes or no? How's it affecting you? And we'll give you 5 options, you tell us. But really to say to them, okay, you've said the issue to you is this. If there were a policy that did the following things, would that make your life better or worse? Or how would it affect it? And then you can drill down because most polling is only able to scratch the surface, and we really want to get farther into these issues. And particularly when you're talking about something like homelessness, where There's also the distinction between the long-term homeless
Right.
and those who are the episodic, because the episodic are oftentimes people who are holding down jobs most of the time, but are just at the edge. And when they lose a job, all of a sudden they can't afford their rent, and then they are out. And that needs a different solution in many ways than the person who has mental illness and
Right.
an addiction issue on top of that. And one of the things that really brought this home to me is when we did our first poll in 2023, we were working with the United Way on the issue of homelessness. And we threw a couple questions on at the end, asking people, in the last couple of years, and actually in the last 2 years, have you been worried about, if you were a renter, being evicted? And if you were a homeowner, were you worried about being foreclosed upon? I.e., are you worried about whether you can afford to live? You asked earlier, have I gotten results that shocked me and surprised me? Absolutely on that one. So we're about half and half in this county, homeowner to renter. So 20% of homeowners had been worried about being foreclosed upon in the last 2 years.
Okay.
All right, now that's a little higher than I would have expected, but not ridiculously so. So among the half who are renters, half had been worried about being evicted because they couldn't afford the rent. That shocked me and distressed me in ways that I was just not prepared for that kind of a result. And things like that, I hope, are the kinds of data that we can all use to bring together business leaders, elected leaders, leaders in the community to say, when we have half of our county worried about whether they're going to be foreclosed upon, I don't know that I'll use the word crisis, but we have a significant problem that needs to be addressed because that affects the future of where we live.
Yeah, that's not just a couple thousand people. That's hundreds of thousands of people.
Absolutely. And it's concentrated more in certain communities than others. So we'll see that more central to North County than we'll see it south. But can you imagine what would happen in Orange or Santa Ana or Anaheim if half of the renters all of a sudden were out of their dwellings because they couldn't afford rent? What would we do as a county? And those are the kinds of things that we really need to be addressing.
Yeah, no, that's really good stuff. We do have a nonprofit here that concentrates on, they have funding for 400 families, and that's kind of like the rotating that are feeling the financial burden, right? They lost a job, they're not able to pay for rent, they're not able to pay for the deposit for the rent. There's, a lot of things going into it, and they have small children and families, but so there's different ways to tackle this issue, but I think that's great stuff of what you're coming up with.
Well, and you just raised a really important point. I worry sometimes that when you do polling that show people think there are problems, it leads people to become pessimistic and maybe even fatalistic. Oh, nothing works.
Right.
When in fact we know a number of things work. And so I was just talking to, actually yesterday, one of the leaders in the county in the nonprofit sphere about could we do some kind of focus groups or other things to share with people some of the programs that have been proven to work to see how they respond to that.
Right.
Like, oh, I didn't know about that. That changes my views about things. Or, all right, that works. That's great, but I still need the following things. That really would help policymakers and nonprofit leaders figure out where's the next thing to be done, or what's the next thing to be done and what areas to go into. So it highlights the things that are working, takes away a little bit of that fatalism view that I worry about, and also helps policymakers identify additional needs that could then be addressed.
Well, I think with challenges are opportunities to me. That's the way we kind of look at things.
Mm-hmm.
We want to focus on, okay, it's a challenge, but there's an opportunity to do something about it, right?
Absolutely.
We're not going to be fatalistic about it. I can't believe we're running up against the end of time. Is there anything else you'd want to share with our audience before we leave?
That social ecology probably has the most fun of any school at UC Irvine. Does
Howard know that?
The chancellor, he loves all of the schools equally. I don't have to. Okay. But seriously, if you follow our social media feeds, you'll get a sense of what we do and the fun we have.
Yeah.
I will say, we really, at the university and especially in our school, are committed to being Orange County's research university and research partner in trying to address a number of the issues that matter to people here. I think we're in a moment right now nationally where people are a little worried about, a little suspicious about higher education. I think some of that is higher education has a role in that for sometimes coming across as we have all the answers, when in fact, what really good research does is it tries to figure out what we know and what we don't know at a moment, rather than giving absolute declaratives. And what we are trying to do in the School of Social Ecology is be a partner in trying to address those problems, not be the absolute know-it-all. So we look forward to continuing to be a partner with the Chamber, for example, and I appreciate your including me today.
Well, we appreciate you being on today, Dean Gould, and we appreciate the partnership. You reached out to us when you landed here years ago, and we do appreciate that partnership we've had, and we look forward to continuing with it since you just got reappointed.
So 5 more years.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Well, there you have it, some fascinating information about our county and our community, right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.